Have you ever stopped to think about why a relatively useless diamond is worth millions of dollars, while the water that is literally keeping you alive every single day is practically free? I mean, really think about it. Water is a life-or-death necessity. Without it, the human body completely shuts down in a matter of days. A diamond? It's just compressed carbon. It's purely aesthetic and honestly pretty useless for survival. Yet one of these costs an absolute fortune, and the other flows right out of your kitchen tap for pennies. Early economists were completely baffled by this. They called this massive contradiction the paradox of value. Well, today in this explainer, we're going to solve this paradox by pulling back the curtain on the fundamental rules that govern our daily lives.
Welcome to the Actors on a Stage, Decoding Basic Economics. It helps to think of the economy not as some giant, incredibly confusing math equation, but actually as a stage play. There are very specific actors, they have distinct motivations, and they follow certain scripts when they interact with one another. And here's the best part. Once you understand these actors and what drives them, all that chaotic daily news about inflation, prices, and markets, it's finally going to make perfect sense.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll meet the economic actors. Second, we'll look at households, focusing on wants and utility. Third, we'll dive into firms, production, and investment. Fourth, we'll explore the stage itself, which is markets and money. And finally, we'll zoom out to the big picture with macro cycles.
All right, let's jump right in. Part 1. Meet the economic actors.
Actor number 1 on our economic stage is households. By definition, a household is just persons or groups living together who take economic decisions regarding commodities purchased to satisfy family wants. To keep it simple, if you share a roof with someone and you pool your grocery money, you are operating as a household. You're the consumers.
Firms. These are the entities that employ factors of production to produce commodities to sell to others. They are the makers, the builders, the service providers of our play. If households are doing the buying, firms are doing the making and selling.
And rounding out our main cast is actor number 3, government. This is a group of organizations possessing legal and political power, exercising authority over the economy. They don't just act in the play, they essentially build the stage itself. They set the rules of the market and make sure the other actors are hitting their marks.
Let's move on to part 2, households, wants, and utility.
So, what actually drives a household to act? Well, it all comes down to human wants. But here's the thing. To an economist, a want isn't just some daydream. Economists frankly don't care about our idle fantasies. They only care about desires backed by wallet power and genuine effort. So a human want is an effective desire for a particular thing which can be satisfied only by making an effort to acquire it. Just casually wishing you had a brand new Honda City car? Not enough. It only becomes a true economic want when you're actually ready to put in the hours, earn the income, and make the purchase. And the defining crucial characteristic of these wants is that they are infinite. They multiply over time, and they constantly battle each other for our very, very limited incomes.
Let's look at how we measure the satisfaction of these wants through something called utility. Utility is really just a fancy word for the want-satisfying power of a commodity. We can actually track this using mangoes. Let's say you're super hungry and you eat one mango. Boom, you get, let's say, 10 utils of satisfaction. It tastes amazing. Then you eat a second mango. Now your total utility goes up to 17. But look closely at the trend in the data here. That second additional mango only gave you 7 extra utils, not 10. This right here is marginal utility, the extra satisfaction you gain from consuming just one more unit. And it drops with every single mango you eat. 10, then 7, then 4, then 1. This is known as the law of diminishing marginal utility. Simply put, the more you have of something, the less you value the very next unit of it. And what happens if you push it too far? Say you force down a 6th mango. At this point, you aren't just getting zero satisfaction, you're probably getting a terrible stomachache. Notice how your total utility actually drops. The marginal utility is now a -3. Economists call this disutility. You have actively made yourself worse off by consuming more.
Okay, so this exact concept perfectly solves our opening hook, the paradox of value. It proves that the price tags in our economy are driven by scarcity at the margins, not by some grand, holistic measure of how important something is to human survival. Think about water. Water has massive value in use. It satisfies a deeply vital human want. But because it is so plentiful in most places, the marginal utility of your next glass of water is incredibly low, which means its value in exchange, its price, is practically zero. Diamonds, on the other hand, have incredibly low value in use. You can't eat them, you can't drink them. But because they are highly scarce, the marginal utility of acquiring just one more diamond is massive. Therefore, their market value, their value in exchange, is sky high. Make sense?
Moving along to Part 3, Firms, Production and Investment.
So if households have endless, infinite wants, firms basically exist to fulfill them. But to a firm, production isn't magic. It's simply the process of adding utility. Imagine a firm taking a raw piece of wood, applying a carpenter's labor, and transforming it into a nice dining table. They haven't created matter from thin air, they've just changed its shape to make it more useful. We call this creating form utility, taking raw material and turning it into a finished product that our household actor actually desires and wants to buy.
But to create this utility, a firm has to assemble the factors of production, and this represents the fundamental cost of doing business. You see, each factor demands a specific reward. Land, which means all our natural resources, earns rent. Labor, the physical and mental human effort, earns wages. Capital, the man-made machinery and the buildings, earns interest, and then there is the entrepreneur. They earn profit. Why? Because they're the ones taking on the absolute, unvarnished risk of organizing all that land, labor, and capital, desperately hoping that the resulting table actually sells before they go completely bankrupt.
All right, Part 4, the stage, markets and money.
Historically speaking, our actors had to rely on a barter economy, but barter suffers from a massive glaring flaw. It requires a double coincidence of wants. Let's say you make shoes and you desperately want a haircut. Finding a barber who specifically needs your exact size of shoes right at that very moment? It's nearly impossible. The whole play just grinds to a halt. Money is the lubricant that removes that friction entirely. It acts as a generally acceptable means of exchange. It lets the shoemaker sell shoes for cash to anyone, and then simply hand that cash to the barber, instantly eliminating all those awkward delays. It's a total game changer.
And when these actors finally meet in a money economy, we get to see the real magic of the market unfold. When we plot a household's demand against a firm's supply, they eventually intersect. That exact crossing point? That is the equilibrium price. And it happens completely organically, without some central planner standing there directing the actors. Competition among buyers and sellers ensures that the price ultimately settles right at this exact point, perfectly balancing the quantity supplied with the quantity demanded.
Finally, let's wrap up with Part 5, the big picture, macro cycles.
When we zoom all the way out and add up every single interaction happening on our stage, we arrive at aggregate demand. You can think of this equation as the ultimate scorecard of our economic play. Let's break it down. C is our households. That's their total consumption. I is our firms, their total investment. G is our government, their total purchases. And if we're dealing with an open economy that trades globally, we factor in X minus M for net exports. Literally the entire script of our macroeconomic play is written out in this one single line of letters.
But here's the catch. This aggregate scorecard doesn't just stay flat. It breathes, it moves. This is the business cycle, which tracks the recurrent fluctuations in total economic activity. Think about the human element involved here. During prosperity, output expands, paychecks grow, and households feel really secure. But then, inevitably, comes a recession. This is a downward trend where falling income forces households to cut back, which in turn causes terrified firms to slash their investments. If it gets severe enough, we hit a depression, characterized by widespread hardship and halted production. But eventually, the stage resets. We enter recovery, a revival where confidence returns and things rise steadily back toward prosperity. It's a constant rhythm.
This relentless, breathing cycle of wanting, producing, and consuming has driven human progress for centuries. But as we've learned today, human wants are infinite, constantly staying one step ahead of the finite resources our stage can actually provide. Which leaves us with a critical, maybe even existential, question to end on. Can our economic actors evolve to achieve sustainable consumption? Can we figure out a way to meet our current needs and improve our quality of life without destroying the environment and sacrificing the needs of future generations? Honestly, it is the ultimate challenge for the next act of our economic play. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.